Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. I want to thank Attorney General Kwame Raoul and his staff, along with my general counsel, Ann Spillane, and our excellent governor's office legal team for working tirelessly for weeks now to prepare federal lawsuits in anticipation of this unconstitutional invasion of Illinois by the federal government. For weeks now, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino have brought their militarized CBP and ICE agents to the streets of Chicago to cause violence and chaos in this city. They need to stop inciting our city's residents. Since the beginning of this invasion, families have been snatched up off the streets or removed from their homes, zip-tied and detained for hours, including especially U.S. citizens and legal residents of our state. And in the words of CBP Chief Patrol Agent Greg Bovino, they're being chosen by how they look. Peaceful protesters have been hit with tear gas and shot with rubber bullets. Journalists simply reporting the facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. U.S. citizens, including children, have been traumatized and detained. This escalation of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command. I want to take you through the steps that he's taken to follow the playbook and show how it is playing out real time here in Illinois. When I first heard reports of Trump's plan to send armed military troops into our streets, more than 100 elected officials, business leaders, clergy, law enforcement, educators, and community organizations gathered on August 25th to send an unequivocal message to Donald Trump. We don't want troops on the streets of Chicago. There was never an insurrection or an invasion on the ground that justified the deployment of the military to our American city. We stood out there on a beautiful day at River Point Park to make that point. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason. I spent the days and weeks following that out and about in our communities, in Bronzeville, in Austin, in Little Village, Berwyn, South Shore, and others, walking and talking and listening to real Chicagoans and local business owners, something Donald Trump, Greg Bovino, Tom Homan, and Kristi Noem have never bothered to do. No insurrections, no invasions. The folks in the neighborhoods do not want armed troops marching in their streets. When it comes to public safety, they want civilian law enforcement when they need them, and jobs, and after-school programs for kids in the neighborhoods. They do not want Donald Trump to occupy their communities. Then the Trump invasion began. Since ICE and CBP announced their operations on September 8th, our people have been subjected to violence, intimidation, and harassment. They have struck fear in our communities, including notably fear in the hearts of U.S. citizens. Trump and the thuggery that his agents have brought has actively made us less safe. Less than a week later, on September 12th, ICE shot and killed a man in Franklin Park, a nearby suburb of Chicago. His name was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. Reports say that he had just dropped his kids off at daycare and was headed to work. Shortly after that incident, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying that the federal agent was seriously injured, sustained multiple injuries, and was dragged a significant distance. Immediately, we were left with more questions than answers.
Efforts to stop Trump from sending in the National Guard.
Well, this all starts when you have a president that bases his impressions of the world on social media gossip and trolling. And so last Sunday, we got an order that said, hey, they're going to bring in or federalize the Oregon National Guard. We were in court within 6 hours, filed a lawsuit, and then sought what we call a temporary restraining order, which effectively would just pause the president's actions. On Saturday, we were successful at 4:30 p.m. We get this order that says, hey, President, you got to stop. Within hours, we hear that the president is now trying to bring the National Guard from California into Oregon. We filed another temporary restraining order. Several hours later, the next day, we hear that he's trying to bring the National Guard from Texas into Oregon. And ultimately, yesterday, you had an exasperated judge who effectively said, hey, you can't do this. There's no justification for using the U.S. military in Oregon in the very stringent standards that Congress outlined and gave power to the president. So that's kind of where we are. Federal government has appealed this, and we're waiting to hear back to see whether the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is even going to listen.
Let me show you what Trump said is happening in Portland, and I'll give you a chance to fact check him on the other side.
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives.
So these are the facts that we have. I just want to give some police data. 2 arrests were made at protests over the weekend and 36 arrests at protests in 4 months. What do you, I think a judge theorized that maybe he was looking at some old newsreels. I mean, what is he talking about and what is really happening?
Who knows what he's talking about most of the time, right? I can say I'm a Michelin star chef, but it doesn't make it the case. He says things, and that's why the courts are here, because this is a president that is known for making his living on, saying inflammatory things on social media, impromptu, some things that feel very unhinged from reality. But that's why our court systems are so darn important, right? We're able to come in, present real facts, as you've noted, and a judge that was appointed by President Trump sat there and said, hey, the facts that you're presenting in court just aren't true, Mr. President. In fact, it's always a bad sign. And I think it's actually a little bit embarrassing that the lawyers for the federal government came in and were actually citing the president's quotes on Truth Social. That's how far they've gone down the hill in the federal government in the court system. So that's why we won the case, as we're moving forward, or I should say we won the motion, and we intend, if those facts stay the same, we expect that result to continue.
Let me read you from the judge's ruling Saturday. It's about resisting government overreach. Quote, this country has a long-standing and foundational tradition of resistance to government overreach, especially in the form of military intrusion into civil affairs. This historical tradition boils down to a simple proposition. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Defendants have made a range of arguments that, if accepted, risk blurring the line between civil and military federal power to the detriment of the nation. How would you describe to people outside of your state the stakes of this standoff?
I think we all have to take a deep breath and then look at all of the things that are going on in our country right now. The first thing that you should grapple with is you have a president who leads through fear. right? His own party can't even stand up to him because they're so fearful of what he's going to do to them in a primary. You have a president that is normalizing the use of the military in our cities. That's un-American. And he's talking about doing it where he's going to be a police force in our communities with the United States military. That's wild. You have him talking about rigging our elections like they're doing in Texas so that they can maintain power in Congress. And then a couple weeks ago, he said and pressured the free press so much that even Senator Ted Cruz was saying, hey, that's too much for me. These are all hallmarks of a very effective democracy. These are the things that other countries strive to obtain. And he is attacking the core of these things. And that is where I think we all have to be concerned. And that's where, just as Americans, we have to stop, we have to push back, draw a line in the sand. And then while he's doing all that, he's yanking health care away from people. He's passing regressive taxes, including tariffs, and also stripping people of food assistance. It's a very bizarre world that this president wants to live in. And I think we have to look at the totality of what he wants America to be and say no.
Governor Pritzker, Democrats, and, most importantly, regular citizens are making it clear that ICE and the National Guard, they're not wanted. They're not wanted in their cities. They're not wanted in their states. Because local law enforcement is there. They already have local law enforcement, right? People who are of the community. And look, I've been plenty critical of local law enforcement. But in the context of what's happening, Trump is sending in, like they said, the thuggery of Trump sending people in. And let's be clear, you have some people disobeying the orders of Trump and running away and fleeing, right? There's these headlines. The videos have been posted on social media of Trump thugs being sent in, and their orders are to get the job done. They were ordered to get the job done. They weren't ordered to just kind of. They were ordered to go out and snatch people, and these people, I guess, decided to run away. These officers decided to run away. I can't imagine that was the order they got from the Fuhrer. I don't know. Do you? So it looks like to me that when people stand up and people resist, and they stand up for their community, they stand up for one another. Not just their family, but their neighbors, their community, their fellow human beings. When they do that, ICE is nothing compared to that. Trump's orders, nothing compared to that. Trump is not king. Not in the United States, at least, not as it should be. The people rule. Trump does not, you do not, serve Trump. Trump serves you. He's a public servant. He should be. Every day, he should wake up thinking, how do I serve the people? Not, how do I oppress the people? So this is where leadership shines. And this is where I love it. It's a sandwich, 'cause it's not either or, it's both. On the one hand, you have grassroots people going out and helping their community members. On the other hand, you have governors and senators and congresspeople speaking out, giving a permission structure to oppose peacefully, without direct violence. Certainly less violence than what you're seeing from the Trump crowd. Oppose this tyranny. That's what it's going to take.